Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 6, Talons and Tea Leave. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered the Great Hall for breakfast the next day, the first thing they saw was Draco Malfoy, who seemed to be entertaining a large group of Slytherin with a very funny story. As they passed, Malfoy did a religious impression of a swooning fit, and there was a roar of laughter. Ignored him, said Hermione, who was right behind Harry. Just ignored him. It's not worth it. Hey, Potter, shrieked Pansy Parkinson, a Slytherin girl with a face like a pug. Potter, the Dementor coming, Potter. Ooh! Harry dropped into his seat at the Gryffindor table next to George Weasley. New third year's timetable, said George, passing them over. What's up with you, Harry? Malfoy, said Ron, sitting up on George's other side and glaring over the Slytherin's table. George looked up in time to see Malfoy pretending to faint with terror again. That little git, he said calmly. He wasn't so croaky last night when the Dementor were down our end of the train, come running into our compartment, didn't he, Fred? Nearly wet himself, said Fred with a confident glance at Malfoy. I wasn't too happy myself, said George. They're horrible things, this Dementor. Sort of freeze your insides, don't they? Sort of freeze your inside, don't they? Said Fred. You didn't pass out, though, did you? Said Harry in a low voice. Forget it. Forget it, Harry, said George bracingly. Dad had to go out to Azkaban one time, remember, Ford, and he said it was the worst place he'd ever been. He came back all weak and shaking. They suck the happiness out of the place, Dementor. Most of the prisoners go mad in there. Anyway, we'll see how happy Malfoy look after our first Quidditch match, said Fred. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. First game of the season, remember? The only time Harry and Malfoy had faced each other in a Quidditch match. Malfoy definitely come off worse. Feeling slightly more cheerful, Harry helped himself to sausage and fried tomatoes. Hermione was examining her new timetable. Ooh, good, we're starting some new subject today, she said happily. Hermione, said Ron, frowning as he looked over his shoulder. They've messed up your timetable. Look, they've got you down for about 10 subjects a day. There isn't enough time. I'll manage. I fixed it all with Professor McGonagall. But look, said Ron, laughing. See, this morning, 9 o'clock division, and underneath, 9 o'clock model studies. And Ron leaned closer to the timetable, disbelieving. Look underneath. That Arthur Mancy. Hermione, but knowing that's good. How you're supposed to be in there and 3 classes at once? Don't be silly, said Hermione shortly. Of course I won't be in there 3 classes at once. Well, pass the marble, said Hermione. But, oh, Ron, what's my timetable a bit full? Hermione snapped. I told you. I fixed it all with Professor McGonagall. Just then, Hagrid entered the great hall. He was wearing his long moleskin overcoat and was absent-mindedly swinging a dead polecat from one enormous hand. All right, he said eagerly, pausing the way up the staff table. You're at my first ever lesson, right after my lunch. Been up since 5 getting everything ready. Hope it's okay, me, a teacher. Honestly. He grinned broadly at them and headed off to the staff table, still swinging the polecat. Wonder what's he been getting ready, said Ron, a note of anxiously in his voices. The hall was getting empty as people head up toward their first lesson. Ron checked his timetable. We'll better go. Look, division at top of the North Tower. It'll make us 10 minutes to get there. They finished their breakfast hastily and said goodbye to Fred and George, and walked back through the hall. As they passed the Slytherin table, Malfoy did another brush fainting fit. A shout of laughter followed Harry on into the entrance hall. The journey through the castle to North Tower was a long one. 2-year Hogwarts hadn't taught them everything about the castle, and they had never been inside North Tower before. There's got to be a shortcut, Ron panted. There's got to be a shortcut. Ron panted as they climbed their seven-long staircase and emerged on the unfamiliar landing where there was nothing but a large painting of a bare stretch of grass hanging on the stone wall. "I think it's this way," said Hermione, peering down the empty passage to the right. "Can't be," said Ron. "That's south. Look, you can see a bit of the lake out of the window." Harry was watching the painting. A fat, ample gray pony had just ambled into grass, was gazing nonchalantly. Harry was used to the subject of Hogwarts painting moving around and leaving the frame to visit each other, but he always enjoyed watching them. A moment later, a short, squat knight in a suit of armor clinging to the picture after his pony. By the look of the grass stain on his metal knees, he had just fallen off. "Aha!" he yelled, seeing Harry, Ron, and Hermione. "What villains are these that trespass upon my private land? Come to scorn at my fellow Pertons? Draw, you knave, you dog!" They watched in astonishment as the little knight took his sword out of his scabbard and began brandishing it violently, hopping up and down in rage. But the sword was too long for him. A particularly wild swing made him over balancing and land face down in the grass. "Are you all right?" said Harry, moving closer to the picture. "Get back, you scurvy bargain! Back, you rough Bluebell Chilnell, division teacher. Harry read. How are we supposed to get up there? As Stone answered his question, the trapdoor suddenly opened, and a silvery ladder descended right at Harry's feet. Everyone was quiet. After you, said Ron, grinning. So Harry climbed the ladder first. He emerged in the strangest looking classroom he had ever seen. In fact, it didn't look like a classroom at all. More like a cross between someone's attic and an old-fashioned tea shop. At least 20 small circular tables were crammed inside it, all surrounded by chintz armchair and a fat little puffy. Everything was lit with a dim crimson light. The curtain at the window were all closed, and the many lamps were draped with a dark red scarf. It was stipplingly warm, and the fire, which was burning under the crowded mantelpiece, was giving off a heavy, sickly sort of perfume as it heated a large copper kettle. The shelf running around the circular wall, crammed with a dusty-looking feather, stub of candle, many pack of tattered playing card, countless silvery crystal ball, and a huge array of teacup. Ron repeated at Harry's shoulder as the class assembled around them, all talking in whisper. Where is she? Ron said. A voice came suddenly out of the shadow, a soft, misty sort of voice. Welcome, it said. How nice to see you in the physical world at last. Harry immediately pressed with a large glittering insect. Professor Trelawney moved into the firelight, and they saw that she was very thin. Her large glasses magnified it. Her eyes, to several size, was very thin. Her large several size, their natural size, and she was draped in a gauzy spangled shawl, innumerably chained, and bead hung around her spindly neck, and her arm and hand were insured with bangle and rings. Sit, my children, sit, he said. Welcome to division, said Professor Trelawney, who had seated herself in a wing armchair in front of the fire. My name is Professor Trelawney. You may not have seen me before. I find that listening too often the hustle and bustle of the main school cloud my inner eyes. Nobody said anything in answer to this extraordinary pronouncement. Professor Trelawney deliberately arranged on her shawl and continued. So you have chosen to study division, the most difficult of all magical art. I must warn you at the out. I must warn you at the outset that if you do not have the sight, there's very little I will be able to teach you. Books can take you only so far in this field. At these words, both Harry and Ron glanced at Hermione, who looked startled at the news that book wouldn't be much help in this subject. Many witch and wizard talented though they are in the area of loud bangs and smell and sudden disappearing, are yet unable to penetrate the veiled mystery of the future. Professor Trelawney went on, her enormous gleaming eyes moving from face to nervous face. It is a gift granted to few. You, boy, she said suddenly to Neville, almost top off his puffy. Is your grandmother well? I think so, said Neville tremulously. I'll be so sure if I were you, dear, said Professor Trelawney, the firelight glinting on her long emerald earring. Neville gulped. Professor Trelawney continued placidly. We will be covering the basic method of division this year. The first term will be devoted to reading the tea leaf. Next term we shall progress to palmistry. By the way, my dear, she shot suddenly in Poverty Paddle, beware of a red-haired man. Poverty gave a startled look at Ron, who was right behind her, and edged her chair away from him. And the summer term, Professor Trelawney went on, we shall progress onto the crystal ball, and we will finish with the fire omen. That is, if we fire omen. That is. Unfortunately, the class will be disrupted in February by a nasty bad flu. I myself will lose my voice. And around Easter, one of our number will leave us forever. A very tense silence follows this pronouncement. Professor Trelawney seemed unaware of it. I wonder, dear, she said to Lavender Brown, who was nearest and shrank back into a chair, if you could pass me the largest silver teapot. Lavender, looking relieved, said him announced an enormous teapot from the shelf and put it down on the table in front of Mrs. Trelawney. Thank you, my dear. Incidentally, that thing you're dreading will happen on Friday, the 16th of October. Lavender trembled. Lavender trembled. Now I want you all to divide into pair. Now I want you all to divide into pairs. Collect the teacup from the shelf. Come to me and I will fill it. Drink until the drag remains. Swirl these around the cup 3 times with the left hand. Then turn the cup upside down on its saucer. Wait for the last of the tea to drain away. Then give your cup to your partner to read. You'll be interpret the parts in using page 5 and 6 of Unfogging the Future. I shall move among you, helping and instructing. Oh, and dear, she caught Neville out by the arm as he made to stand up. After you've broken your first cup, would you be so kind as to select one of the blue part in one, rather than attach it to the pink? Sure enough, Neville had no sooner reached the shelf of a teacup than there was a tinkle of breaking china. Professor Trelawney swept over to him, holding a dustpan and brush inside. One of the blue one, then, dear, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. When Harry and Ron had their teacup filled, they went back to their table and tried to drink their scalding tea quickly. They swirled the drag around as Professor Trelawney had instructed them, and then drained the cup and swapped them. Right, said Ron as they both opened their book at page 5. And 6. What can you see in mine? Right, said Ron as they opened their book at page 5 and 6. What can you see in mine? A load of soggy brown stuff, said Harry. The heavily perfumed smoke in the room was making him feel sleepy and stupid. Broaden your mind, my dear, and allow your eyes to see past the mundane. Professor Trelawney airy through the gloom. Harry tried to pull himself together. Right, you've got wonky sort of cross, he said, constantly unfucking the future. That means you're going to have a trial and suffering. Sorry about that, but there's a thing that you could be the sun. Hang on, that means great happiness. So you're going to suffer, but be very happy. You need your inner eyes testing, if you ask me, said Ron and gazed, and they both had to stifle their laugh as Professor gazed in their direction. My turn, Ron peered through Harry's teacup, his forehead working with effort. There's a plop, a bit like a bowler hat, he said. Maybe you're going to work for Ministry of Magic. He turned the teacup the other way, but this way it looked more like an acorn. What's that? He scanned his copy of Unfogging the Future. A windfall of unexpected gold. Excellent, you can lend me some. And there's a thing here. He turned the cup again. That looked like an animal. Yeah, if it was a head, it looked like a hippo. No, a sheep. Professor Trelawney whirled around at Harry as Harry led a sort of laughter. Let me see that, my dear, she said, reproving to Ron, sweeping over and snatching her cup from him. Everyone went quiet to watch. Professor Trelawney was staring into the teacup, rotating and Professor Trelawney was staring into the teacup, rotating anti-clockwise. The falcon, my dear, you have a deadly enemy. Barry know that, said Hermione in a loud whisper. Professor Trelawney stared at her. Well, they do, said Hermione. Everybody know about Harry and you know who. Harry and Ron stared at her with a mix of amazement and admiration. They never heard Hermione speak to a teacher like that. Before Professor Trelawney chose not to reply, she lowered her huge eyes to Harry's cup again and continued to turn it. The club, an attack, dear, dear. This is not a happy cup. I thought that was a bowler hat, said Ron sheepishly. The skull danger in your path, my dear. Everyone was staring, transfixed, at Professor Trelawney. He gave the cup a final turn, a gasp, and a scream. There's another tinkle of breaking china. Neville had smashed a second cup. Professor Trelawney sank into the vast armchair, her glittering hand on her heart and her eyes closed. My dear, my poor dear old, my poor dear boy. No, it is kinder not to say. No, don't ask me. What it is, Professor Dean Thomas at once, said Dean Thomas at once. And slowly they crowded around Harry and Ron table, peering pressing close to Professor Trelawney chair to get a good look at Harry Cup. My dear, Professor Trelawney's huge eye opened dramatically. You have the Grim. The what? Said Harry, but he could only tell that he was the only one who didn't understand. Dean Thomas struck at him, and Lavender Brown looked puzzled, but nearly everybody else clapped their hand to their mouth in horror. The Grim, my dear, the Grim, cried Professor Trelawney. Looked shocked that Harry cried Professor Trelawney, who looked shocked that Harry hadn't understand. The giant spectacled dog that haunts churchyard, my dear boy. It is an omen, the worst omen of death. Harry's stomach lurched. The dog on the cover, death omen in Florian blots. The dog in the shadow of Mangley Crescent. Lavender clapped her hand to her mouth, too. Everyone was looking at Harry. Everyone except Hermione, who had gone up and moved around to the back of the Professor Trelawney chair. I don't think it looked like a Grim, she said flatly. Professor Trelawney surveyed Hermione with a mounting dislike. You forgive me for saying so, my dear, but I perceive very little aura around you. Very little respect for the representation of the future. Seamus Finch was tilting his head from side to side. It looked like a Grim if you do this, he said with his eyes almost shut. But it looked more like a donkey from here. It looked like a I'm going to die. When you've all finished deciding on whether I'm going to die or not, said Harry, taking even himself by surprising. No, nobody seemed to want to look at him. I think we'll leave the lesson here from today, said Professor Trelawney. Said Professor Trelawney. Um, yes, please pack away your thing. Silently, the class took their teacup back to Professor Trelawney, packed away their book, and closed their bag. Even Ron was avoiding hairy eyes. "Until we meet again," said Professor Trelawney faintly. "Fair fortune be yours." "Oh, and dear," she pointed at Nebula, "you'll be late next time, so mind you, work extra hard to catch up." Harry, Ron, and Hermione descended Professor Trelawney's ladder, a winding staircase in silence, then set off for Professor McGonagall's transfiguration lesson. It took them for so long to find her classroom that, early as they had left division, they were only just in time. Harry chose a seat right next to the back of the room. Then said, Harry chose to sit right at the back of the room, feeling like he was just sitting in a very bright spotlight. The rest of the class kept shooting furtive glances at him, as though he was about to drop dead at any moment. Hurley heard what Professor McGonagall was telling him about Animagi, the wizard who could transform all into animal at will into animals. I wasn't even watching when she transformed herself in front of her eyes to a tabby cat with a spectacle marking around her glass. Really, what has gone into you all today? Said Professor McGonagall, turning back into herself with a faint pop and staring around at them all. Not that it mattered, but that's the first of my transformation I got in class from the class. Everybody had and turned toward Harry again, but nobody spoke. Then Hermione raised her hand. "Please, Professor, we've just got our first division class, and we were just reading the tea leaf, and—" "Of course," said Professor McGonagall, suddenly frowning. "There's no need to say any more, Miss Granger. Tell me, which of you will be dying this year?" Everyone stared at her. "Me," said Harry finally. "I see," said Professor McGonagall, fixing Harry with her beady eyes. "Then you should know, Porter, that Sybil Trelawney has predicted the death of one student a year since she arrived at the school. None of them had died yet. Seeing that omen is her favorite way of greeting her new class. If it were not for the fact that I never speak ill of my colleague," Professor McGonagall broke off, and they saw that her nostril gone white. She went on more calmly. "Division is one of the most impressive branch of magic. I shall not conceal from you that I have very little patience with it. Choose seer very rare, and Professor Trelawney—" She stopped again, and then said in a very matter-of-fact tone, "You look in excellent health to me, Potter, so you'll excuse if you don't let your homework off today. I assure you that if you die, you need not." He ended it. Hermione laughed. Harry felt a bit better. It was harder to feel scared of a lump of tea leaf away from the dim red light and buffling perfume of its Trelawney classroom. Not everyone was convinced, though, however. One still looked worried, and Lavender whispered, "But what about Neville and Cup?" When the transfiguration class had finished, they joined the crowd thundering toward the great hall for lunch. "Ron, cheer up," said Hermione, pushing a dish of stew toward him. "You heard what Professor McGonagall said." Ron responded in his plate and picked his fork, but didn't start. "Harry," he said in a low, serious voice, "you haven't seen a great black dog anywhere, have you?" "Yeah, I have," said Harry. "I saw one the night I left the Dursley." Ron let his fork fall with a clatter. "Probably a stray," said Hermione calmly. Ron looked at Hermione so he should gone mad. "Hermione, if Harry's seen a Grim, that's bad," he said. My Uncle Billy saw one and he died 24 hours later." "Coincidence," said Hermione airily, pouring herself some pumpkin juice. "You don't know what you're talking about," said Ron, starting to get angry. "Grim scared the living daylight out of the most wizard." "There you are, then," said Hermione in a bitter tone. "They see the Grim and die of fright." The Grim, not a death. The Grim is not an omen. It's a cause of death. It's not an omen. It's the cause of death. And Harry's still with us because he's not stupid enough to see one and think, right, well, I'd better pop my clock then." Ron mouthed worriedly as Hermione opened her bag and took out her new Arthur book and propped against the juice jug. I think division seemed very woolly, she said, searching for a page. A lot of guesswork, if you ask me. There's nothing woolly about Grim in that cup, said Ron haughtily. You didn't seem quite so confident when you were telling Harry it was a sheep, said Hermione coolly. Professor Trelawney said you didn't have a right over. You just didn't like rubbish at something for change. He had touched her nerve. Hermione slammed her Arthur book down the table so hard that the bed of meat and carrot flew everywhere. If being good at division means I have to pretend to see Death Omen in a lump of tea leaf, I'm not sure I'll be studying it much longer. That lesson was absolutely rubbish compared to my Arthur class. She snatched up her bag and stalked away. Ron found her. What she's talking about, he said to Harry. She hasn't been to an Arthur class yet. Harry's places get out of the castle after lunch. Yesterday it rained it clear. The sky was as clear as pale grey, and the grass springy damp underfoot as he said her first ever care of a magical creature class. Ron and Hermione was speak to each other. Harry walked behind them in silence. They walked down the sloping lawn to Hagrid's hut on the edge of Forbidden Forest. It was only when he spotted only two familiar